So welcome, Craig. And I'm not able to see the name of our second attendee. It looks like it's in another language, but welcome. And please do type in which
I think
part of
it's in
the
Russian.
world you're from Russia. Okay. So we are just going to wait for people to join. So Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Seema. Thanks for hosting me.
And I've heard, as we were talking the other day, you were telling me you just got back from an international trip from Japan, I believe.
Yes, I was working in Japan all last week with a group of people from 8 different countries, all working for Ube Industries, as a matter of fact.
Wow, that's great. So how's the weather at this time over there in Japan?
Well, it's supposed to be the rainy season, but I didn't get to use my umbrella until the very last day.
Well, that's nice, I guess. Was it really hot and humid then?
Yeah. No need to bother putting on makeup, yes.
Oh, okay. That's the only part around, I think, Asia and India, that side of the world at this time.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's been pretty hot where I live, but it's not humid. I live in the Silicon Valley, California, and we really love the weather here because we don't have to sweat so much, and I can leave the doors open and there's no mosquitoes.
Yes, that's a nice part, isn't it?
Yes. How about you? Where are you?
I am also in California, very close to Silicon Valley. I'm in the East Bay, so
Ah,
in Dublin, and it's quite windy over here. um,
yeah, it's amazing. You have to water the plants a lot just because of the wind.
yeah, yeah. But it's nice and cool most of the time. I'm glad our heat wave has ended now.
Yeah, we
So
can't complain about the weather because we don't have forest fires raging around our houses like some of the places in California.
yes, I'm feeling really blessed and lucky with that. So as you join, welcome to our webinar. Please do let us know in the chat box which part of the world you're joining us from. We've had people join us from all different parts of the world, which is really exciting. You get to meet people from around the world on these webinars.
Yeah, it really is. It's a small planet.
Yes, it's getting smaller day by day, that's for sure.
Well, I really think that this kind of international global business interaction, this makes countries and borders irrelevant. As much as we can do this kind of thing, I think we're contributing to a better planet.
Yes, definitely. So we are just going to get started in about 2 minutes. We will keep pace with the time and to honor everyone's time. And we had said 12 o'clock. We will get started on time, on schedule.
Well, yes.
You are joining Mentor Global webinar.
Oh, Shabir is on the line. Oh, hello, Shabir. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you coming. And Alana, thanks for showing up. I guess that's from Hungary. Oh yeah. Thank you, Alana from Hungary, for Furacell Electric.
And it looks like Scott has joined us too. Welcome, Scott.
Okay.
Welcome, Charlotte. Excuse me. Lana from Hungary has joined us.
Wonderful. Oh, Masa from Ube Industries. Hello, Masa. I was just with Ube last week.
Wonderful, welcome. And it is 12 o'clock. Kimberly, shall we get started?
Let's go.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to Mentor Global's monthly webinar. And today's topic is how to create a cohesive team of highly engaged employees. And we have our co-host Kimberly Weefling with us. And I'll just do a round of introduction. I would like to introduce Mentor Global. Mentor Global helps businesses with human capital management, managed learning services, and organization and leadership development, and an Empower Apprenticeship program, which is a unique way for workforce development where companies get custom-tailored skill set. And my name is Seema Giri. I am your host for today. Just a little bit about me. I'm an author, speaker, trainer, mentor, and entrepreneur, and I've spent the last 20 years working in the project management domain. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to not only groom and help people find their passion and their potential, but also to create synergies within the companies that maximizes on the potential of their people, processes, and tools. And I also get to work on my other great passion through Mentor Global, which is marketing. And I am so honored to host this series of webinars on leadership development for CXOs, senior leaders, and people who are transitioning into leadership and entrepreneurs who want to go to the next level. And I'm so happy to introduce to you Kimberly Weefling today. She is the president of Weefling Consulting, and she enables teams to achieve what seems impossible. She has worked with people from over 50 different countries. And she began her career with HP. She was there for 10 years as product development, program management, and engineering leadership. She has spent 3 years growing Silicon Valley startups, including Xerox PARC spinoff, where she was the VP of Program Management and Organizational Effectiveness. And in the past 7 years, she's worked mainly with globalizing Japanese companies. And in 2007, she wrote what became a very popular project management book called Scrappy Project Management, the 12 predictable and avoidable pitfalls every project faces. This was also published in Japanese by the Nikkei Business Press. Kimberly is a force of nature, a menace to mediocrity. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce that properly.
Mediocrity.
Mediocrity, thank you. On a mission that matters, she's determined to transform planet Earth for a better one. Inspire Kimberly Weefling and engaged team at a time.
Thank you, Seema. I really appreciate that. We have a huge challenge in this world. Global employee engagement is 10%. On average, globally, only 10% of people are engaged in their work. The other 90% are either just showing up for work to get paid, or a few of them actually are actively working against their own companies. I have a company called Silicon Valley Alliances with colleagues who are all over the planet working to change that. We typically work in Japan, Europe, Asia, or other parts in the US with globalizing companies. And we've seen a lot of opportunities where the organization's identity and team needs to be created more strongly because of mergers, acquisitions, or other changes in growth of the company. Here's a quick agenda. We'll look at why teams fail, some real-world examples, what is organizational culture, and what is organization's DNA. and how you can use the powers of stories from the past, present, and future to create a more cohesive team and a real sense of identity in your organization. And why does that matter? Because a group of people is not the same as a real team. And a real team is what's required to get business success in this competitive global environment. So those of you who stay till the end, Seema, what do we have for them?
We do have, for those that stay till the end, we have a special bonus that we will reveal a little bit later. We'll keep it a little mystery.
Okay, great. First of all, a quick audience poll, because I like to get you engaged. Who has worked in a team in the past year? I bet it's everybody, but I'd just like to see a raise of hands if you have worked in a team, either locally or remotely in the past year. Let's see. Poll. Yes, here we go. Oh yeah, so far 100%. Let's take a few more seconds for that. Most of the problems and challenges that we're facing in our businesses are team challenges. And you wouldn't play baseball with one person on a team, and you certainly wouldn't play a baseball game with 9 great catchers, because you'd never win. And so we really need to, most of us, learn to work with other human beings. And especially when we're working in global teams, it can be challenging because of being separated by distance and some cultural challenges that we face. So most people on the call have been working in teams. Let's see. Let's go back here to, all right. And how about global teams? So most of you have worked in teams. Raise your hand if you've worked in a global team, meaning you had people from other countries on your team, or you were working with people who were located in other countries, so remotely. So even if, like, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, over half of the people who live here don't speak English at home. So every day I'm working in a global team, even if I just drive down the street to meet with people. Okay, so quite a few, 60% of people have worked in global teams. So what I'm going to talk about in the next 30 minutes applies equally well to people who are local to yourself or people working in global teams. But it's especially important for global teams because it can be so much more challenging to create common ground and common understanding and identity with people who are located halfway around the world, 12 hours different from us, or from an entirely different culture. So let's see, who am I first? Well, yeah, my dad was a welder. I was an electronics technician when I was in the military. I became a chemist and a physicist. And then after I graduated with my master's in physics, I worked at HP for 10 years in 7 different jobs. And this is where I first became interested in organizational culture, because I was so naive. I believed all the stories about Hewlett-Packard that I had read, and I admired that company so much because it had a reputation for having an incredibly strong culture. And there was a book called In Search of Excellence that talked about the wonderful culture of HP and how valuable it was to the business success. It was a great advantage in recruiting people because people would love to work for HP. They would work for HP for less money because it was such a great company with a great reputation. But when I worked at HP, I was shocked to find out that that culture was deteriorating. Bill and Dave were the founders, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. They were still alive when I worked there, but their influence was fading. And that is one of the challenges organizations face as they grow and mature, as the founder's influence fades, how to keep that spirit alive so that they can maintain that powerful cultural advantage. I've worked at quite a few different companies, including Silicon Valley startups. Imagine these 3 failures. 3 Silicon Valley startup failures, and I'm proud of it because each one was a great learning experience with a totally different organizational culture. Since 2001, and my consulting business started back then, I've worked with a whole bunch of different companies all over the world and locally. I wrote the book, as Seema mentioned, and another book is on electronic form about organizational culture, the topic we're speaking about today. And I do focus on making impossible things become possible, mainly through the power of teamwork and cohesive teams who come to believe that together they can achieve what would be impossible for anybody acting alone. So the common challenges that people face working in teams. Seema and I were talking about this. And if you want to grow productive employees in successful companies, you really have to understand what gets in the way of effective teamwork. So Seema, do you have anything that you want to say about that?
That in my experience also, we found a lot of challenges, excuse me, especially when working with different virtual teams as well with different cultures. So what do you find? I think growth is quite essential to learning about the different cultures and effectiveness. What have you found?
Well, you're absolutely right. When you want to grow your company, the first thing you need to do is to grow strong individuals and leaders and to help them become a real team, working together, not just a group of people. And those two things are interrelated. The success of your company is related to the growth and development of your people and your teams. Well, let's look at some of the barriers, some of the causes of failure, and then we'll talk about how to overcome those failures. Everybody knows this data, I guess. There's a lot of research, but you probably know this because you've lived it, that over 80% of global business teams failed to reach their goals. And this is such a frustrating situation because nobody feels responsible for the failure, and everybody is wondering who is behind this dysfunctional behavior. And if you look at the research, it's pretty clear that the causes of failure are completely predictable and completely avoidable, in my opinion. Teams fail to build trust. It's the number one biggest cause that was cited in this MIT Sloan Management Review. And they fail to overcome communication barriers. That's the number 2 problem. And I thought it's probably language, right? But when I looked at the data, it's not only language. In fact, language was a small part of the communication barrier for global teams. It was problem solving and decision making. And honestly, even with all native English speakers working together in the same room in my home country, I still think communication barriers are among the top causes of failure. I don't know how people feel about that, but I have problems communicating with my own husband, and he's from the same country and supposedly speaks English as well. Another key cause of failure is lack of goal alignment between the team members and the team. And here's where we start to get a hint of why organizational culture and organizational DNA is so important. How can we align the goals of individuals with the team and the organization without going around and micromanaging everybody? We need a force field of organizational culture that automatically calls people to the right kinds of behaviors in alignment with our organization's culture. And finally, the team's vision and goals were just unclear. And this is really shocking. If you look at these 4 causes of failure in teams, you can see lack of trust, poor communication, goals aren't aligned, goals aren't clear. Whose job is it to make sure that we have that kind of goal alignment, communication, clarity, and good trusting relationships? I mean, of course, it's the leader's job. This is completely a failure of leadership. And I think it's important for us to recognize that. And it's not necessary, but frequently organizations grow by acquisitions or mergers, or they grow organically. And what you end up having is something I've encountered with one of our clients, which is a Frankenstein. Now look at all of these different logos and names. These are all from the same company. And this is what I mean by a Frankenstein. It's kind of stitched together like a monster, but it's not a cohesive whole being. And so I've been working with this company for about 10 years now. And one of the things they've done is created a shared identity, a shared understanding of who they are as an organization. And they have come up with something that looks now more like Kuraray as a unified global company. And I am so proud of this company because they have a long-term commitment to developing their people and creating global networks of key individuals who will shape the future of their organization's culture for decades to come. I've personally been working with over 300 of their high potential people. And because of this commitment to development and growth of their employees, their business is growing and their profits are growing as well. And this is what it looks like after people meet each other and start to get to know each other and share a common history and a common vision of the future. These are not people sitting idly in a class. These are people who are excited to be together and on a journey that they know is much more important than merely creating profit. So let's find out how they did that by talking about organizational culture.
I just had a thought come into my mind, and I was wondering what additional challenges the global teams face.
Well, definitely when a merger and acquisition happens, cultures collide. And also a learning and development of common language and common framework for approaching issues, common set of guiding values that's more than just a poster on the wall that HR printed. These are some of the things that companies need to establish in order to avoid the team dysfunctionality. Let me just remind you of a famous movie called The Wolf of Wall Street. If you've seen this movie, you can see that this has a very strong, clearly defined culture. I would say a really crazy, negative, dysfunctional culture. So that's one of the things that I look for is what are some examples of some of the worst cultures in the world? And this movie is perfect. If you've never seen it, you'll really understand more about company culture after seeing this movie. But let me use an iceberg model instead. This is what people see when they come into your work environment. Above the surface, they can see the work environment. What does the building look like? What is on people's desks? Does the CEO have a closed off office? Or like the box CEO, is he sitting out in the middle of his people with a big open workspace like everyone else? Below the surface, though, are the attitudes, beliefs, and values, and the identity of the organization and its underlying purpose that drives this behavior. And you might think about it like this. What are the stories that you tell the newly hired person the first week that they join your company? What do you tell them about what it's like to work there? That is the best indicator of the real culture of a company that I've seen. Because just looking at the behaviors, it's hard to discern what is driving that behavior. And then when you have a merger or an acquisition, now you have two different companies trying to work together. And on the surface, they might be similar in behavior, but underlying values, attitudes, beliefs, and their sense of identity might be quite different. Try to imagine a company like Disney merging with a company like Oracle. I mean, it's a completely different kind of work, completely different value systems and what is probably the normal corporate behavior. So you can imagine what it's like whenever any two companies try to merge. And if you have ever tried to work even with somebody from a different office of your own company, you can find so many differences in how people behave and what drives that behavior. I like to say experience drives beliefs, and beliefs drive behavior, and that behavior is what produces our business results.
This is an interesting way of putting this. I have not heard about the iceberg model for organizational cultures before. This is quite interesting.
Well, let me just give you a little different model, because the iceberg model makes it look like we're disconnected, but I really like the island model better. I was in Hawaii last month, and anyone who's been to Hawaii, you know there are many different islands, and above the ocean it looks like they're separate. But if you look below the water, all of these islands are connected. They're not just floating out there. And I honestly believe that the island model gives us hope for the future of our Frankenstein organizations. And let me show you what I mean. Above the water level, we have the observable behaviors, the language, the artifacts, as my mentor, Dr. Edgar Schein, calls them, the things that you can look around and see that are evidence of the culture beneath the surface. And beneath the surface, there are things that are different. But if you drill down deep enough, you get to the shared foundation of human beingness. And that's where I think there's an opportunity to find something in common, regardless of how different your different departments or divisions or entities are. There are some common human issues that can unite us. And let me give you some examples of that. People have different food and music practices, of course, in different cultures, different language. And underneath of that, they have different biases or work ethics or social practices. But if you dig down deep enough, what people want, they want a sense of purpose. And it's not enough to just be going to work to make money. The reason we have only 10% people engaged in their work all over the world is in large part because of lack of a sense of purpose. And they also are afraid of failure. And they want to be appreciated for who they are. They want to feel significant, competent, important. So if we can reach down to that level, we get to the point where NASA was in the 1960s, where the person sweeping the floor at NASA, the janitor sweeping the floor, he thought his job was to help to put a man on the moon, not to just clean the floor. And that's where we want to work when we're trying to create healthy, dynamic organizational cultures that will bring your team together and build a truly cohesive team, not just a bunch of disgruntled workers coming to work to earn money to pay their bills. So let's see. Cultural DNA. It seems like a really nebulous topic, doesn't it, Seema?
Sure it does.
I know when I started talking about these things, people were saying, oh, that's the touchy-feely stuff. And that is a problem with talking about organizational culture and cultural DNA. But these issues directly connect to employee satisfaction, employee retention, and employee growth. Employees who see the big vision of their company, a purpose beyond profit, and have a sense of identity that unites them are more likely to stay and be productive than companies where the employees don't have that. So how do we make this real and tangible, especially when we have so much email that we have to check every day? Well, you have to assign some time to this. This is every bit as important as answering that next email. So here's a couple of things to help you understand what is an organization's cultural DNA. I like to do these exercises in a group of people that I get together for at least a couple of hours. I mean, a whole day is great. Even 2 hours, we can start to do a little lunch and learn where people can start to explore this. So what is an organization's DNA? Well, first, think about products you'll never make, services you'll never offer. Usually, people in an organization can exactly tell you that, hey, we'll never make this. For example, one of our clients is a very exciting company that makes sports vehicles. And they said, well, we're never going to make senior diapers, Kimberly. Well, of course not. It doesn't fit their identity or image as an exciting company that makes people's lives fun. So can you think of some products your company would never make? Something that you would never see advertised with your brand on it? And then reverse that. And it's a much easier way than trying to ask people to describe the brand qualities. When I talk about brand, I know usually marketing people think that brand is an external thing, but an authentic brand is based on an internal understanding by the employees of what that brand stands for. Otherwise, it's just marketing hype. A few other fun exercises you can do, and these are the things we do in our 1 and 2 day workshops, is think of some slogans you'd never use. Our products are junk. All we care about is profits. Who cares about our customers? Or how about headlines you'll never see? I mean, these kinds of things help people quickly come to an understanding of what their company is not. And human brains are really great at flipping the opposite. And so if you can go to the negative first, it's fun, it's fast, you go to the dark side, and then you can very clearly and easily reverse all of these things and figure out who you are and what your identity really is. One final one is famous people who will never represent our brand. Yeah, you don't want these guys representing your brand. All right, so let's go on to an audience poll, and let's see how many of our audience members believe that their organization has a strong, positive organizational culture and that they feel they're aligned with that culture. So let's see. I'm very curious to see. You know, honestly, very few organizations have a great, strong, positive organizational culture, except on the poster on the wall in the executive's office. There's always a great poster that says, here's our vision, here's our mission, here's our values, here's our purpose. But whether or not that's integrated into the thinking and the behavior and daily practice, that's another matter.
So 40% are saying absolutely yes, 60% are saying yes.
Excellent, wonderful. Well, you are more lucky than the people I normally get to work with. And I think that, you know, in a way, that's a good thing that people who have a positive culture are spending time to come to this webinar and listen to this discussion. I mean, that shows that they understand the value of culture. I would say that a lot of the organizations that I've encountered have no idea that culture is so important, and they just randomly let the culture emerge. Frequently, it becomes aligned with whatever is the CEO's personality or whoever the most charismatic person is. I think we've all probably experienced work situations, or our friends have, where they say that some dysfunctional, powerful person is a little bit scary and you have to be careful what you say or how you say it. You know, so when you have that kind of culture of personality, it really depends on whether that leader is a positive influence or negative, which way your culture goes. And Jim Collins's work on that long ago showed that the leader of an organization has a huge influence on the organization's culture. So I'm glad to see that so many people have a positive culture here. Let's see. Okay, well then let's talk about how you can make it even stronger, since we've already got a good start on that. So imagine that you wanted to make your culture even stronger and more powerful, or you're going through a transition where you want to merge two entities, or develop stronger relationships between two divisions, or have better cross-functional or a global collaboration. I would start with the power of stories. Human beings remember stories. You know, we all grew up, at least I did, sitting around the campfire, telling stories and listening to stories. And there's some great work by Chip and Dan Heath about how stories stick, published in a book called Made to Stick. And what they say is stories are remembered. If you talk about a trip to Paris and you talk about the population of Paris, the square kilometers of the city of Paris, and the GDP revenue of Paris businesses, people won't remember that. But if you say, oh, I went to Paris, city of love, stood under the Eiffel Tower, and the love of my life proposed to me, well, people will remember that story forever. So I would like to encourage people to use stories to communicate the most important things about their company's purpose, identity, values, and vision for the future. This is what leads to company growth and company stability. When people understand who you are, what's your purpose and your identity and your shared vision for the future, you have reduced cost of hiring because people want to join your company because it's a brand that actually matters and that your employees will brag about to their friends and family. So start with stories from your past. These are the founder stories. When I worked at Hewlett-Packard, the story people told me the first week I worked there was they said, you see that tool cabinet, Kimberly? That cabinet's not locked up. Do you know why it's not locked up? Because we trust our people. Many years ago, somebody locked up a tool cabinet at Hewlett-Packard, and one of the founders came in with a lock cutter and cut the lock off that cabinet and said, we don't lock up our tools. We trust our people. Now that story was passed down from generation to generation over many decades, and they were still telling it as if they had observed it themselves. And I'm sure your companies all have a founder's story, something that's inspiring, a story that people tell to understand the roots of the greatness of your organization. I'd encourage you to find that. I mean, there's great stories, for example, from Suntory of the Shinjiro Torii opened his wine shop in Osaka, Japan, and then made a popular port wine domestically. Later, Suntory was the first to distill whiskey in Japan, and many people said, hey, it's impossible. And from that came this, we can do it, go for it spirit that still permeates Suntory today. I worked with Yamaha, and I've learned the story of this wonderful founder who carried this musical organ on his back with a colleague across the mountains to Tokyo, only to be rejected by the expert musicians there who said it wasn't in good tune. And then he carried it back over the mountains, tuned it and fixed it and brought it back again, finally succeeding to establish his company in Tokyo. I mean, this kind of story sticks with people generation after generation, and you can imagine that it inspires people to persist, to fail forward, and to keep going in the face of impossible odds. Now, how do we do that in an actual workshop experience? Well, it's pretty simple. We use something developed by the Creative Leadership Center. It's called the Center for Creative Leadership, and it's the Visual Explorer process. Now, you can purchase online a bunch of pictures that are stock images, or you can bring magazines or collect your own pictures. But it's important that we use visual images and stories as well as talking.
So this,
especially in, yes.
I'm sorry, Kimberly, I think this looks really interesting. I'm curious to find out after seeing this picture, what do you actually do in this?
Well, great question. Well, we sat around here and told stories from the past and present that we felt best represented our organization's DNA and culture. We captured some keywords on these post notes, and then we put those words and pictures together in a collage. And this is amazing. You know, if you tell adults You're going to be making a collage. You're going to be pasting pictures. They're going to be like, oh, come on, Kimberly, we're not children. But then you let them do it. Tell their stories, make these collages, pull together the images and words. And they work for 30 minutes without a break. And they're in a state of flow, thinking about the culture and what it means to be in their organization. And at the end of it, you have something that you could never get by just talking. You can feel a sense of what this organization is about and what matters by the frequency and type of words they have and the pictures that they chose. So, and that's something that you can keep in presence in your workplace. You can put it online. You can even use a shared whiteboard where people can add to it. This can be done electronically in person.
That's quite interesting and innovative for something typically that we as adults don't really do anymore. As children, I'm sure we've done it several times, and that's where the creativity really starts flowing as well.
Oh, you're so right. Well, children of the age of 5 years old have almost 98% creativity, according to one NASA study. But by the time we're adults, we've only got 2% of that creativity left. But personally, I think the power of the visual images is undeniable. I make a collage every year since 1995 that represents my future intention. I do it on New Year's Day or somewhere around New Year's so that it can capture the essence of what I'm committed to in a way that words could not do. I mean, words are very inadequate to express some of the more intangible, difficult, complex feelings, especially if we're trying to communicate cross-culturally, where language is a barrier. Pictures are essential. Everyone gets the images, even if they don't understand the words.
So true.
Well, yeah, well, there's a few other things that happen as people share these stories. What they find out is, hey, the stories they're telling in Europe, Asia, and the US, well, they have some common themes. And maybe we do have a lot more in common than we thought. Maybe what we share is more important than our perceived differences. And that goes back to the island model and the common ground, the shared human beingness that brings people together to do something we call work.
So, Kimberly, can you use stories for the future as well?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that's a great progression to go from stories from the past, the founder stories that inspire us and help us understand the roots of who we are and our values, and then stories from the present that make our values real. I mean, please spare me from values on a chart on the wall. Stories from the present help us understand what these values look like in action. And then stories from the future can help create a sense of shared purpose and a shared future vision. And keep in mind that the number 4 reason that global teams fail is because they lack a shared vision and shared goals for the future. So by all means, pick stories of the future. And let's talk about that, actually. You might try something nonverbal, like silently drawing what the future might look like, if anything were possible. You might think about, let's skip this one. You might think about what stories people will tell about you when you're retired. Imagine it's your retirement party, and all of your friends and colleagues who admire you are there, suppliers and customers too. And what would you like them to be telling about your impact on the organization? If you think about 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, what you might have done that would be carried into the future, you're actually contributing to your organization's future DNA and the future of your company. Now, unfortunately, many people are just pretty happy to just retire without any terrible things happening. But I hope that people listening to this webinar would have a sense of their own personal contribution to the future. So think about stories from your future, what would you like to be saying about what you contributed to your company at your retirement party? I hope it won't be congratulations on your mediocrity. At least nothing bad happened while you worked here. I hope it will be something like the Suntory story of doing what people said was impossible, or the Yamaha story of persisting in the face of insurmountable odds, or the Hewlett Packards of trusting people so much that that trust lasted decades into the future after the founding of that company. And then, nothing lasts forever, and someday we're celebrating our 100th birthday. And at that point, it's going to be more important, not that we just had a job, but that we had a purpose beyond simply making a living. And I hope that many of us would want to influence people in ways that would still be making a difference decades in the future. That somehow we've influenced an organizational culture that could transform a whole generation of new employees, that could help give them access to possibilities that might not exist otherwise. And, we all die. So I like to think about what's my life purpose. And that's why I say my purpose is to transform planet Earth for the better, one individual, one team, one organization at a time. Again, 90% of the people going to work on this planet are disengaged or not engaged. Why? Even the best organizations only have 60% engagement, according to Gallup research. There is no financial advantage to having a disengaged workforce. And creating a shared sense of identity, growing your people, growing your team, growing a commitment to a real organizational culture and shared DNA and a purpose beyond profit is just good for business. Well, let's just see if anybody's gotten anything valuable out of this so far.
I'm sure I have gotten a tremendous value. So who here has found our time together valuable so far? And this would be a great time for another poll.
Right.
To complete. What action will you take as a result of this webinar? And after this poll, this would be a great time to, can Kimberly take a few questions from the audience?
I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Seema.
Okay, great.
Okay, other. 100% of people are doing other. I want to know what those things are so I can add them to this list.
Yes,
please do type them in the chat.
We'll certainly ask people to mention that in a few of the things. And Kimberly,
yes.
While we're waiting for people to post their questions over here, would it be okay if we switch screens?
Absolutely. I will switch back to you. And oh, by the way, I'm happy of that. I see that somebody asked a question about that.
Yes, wonderful.
All right, so I have released screen sharing, and I hope you're the one that's controlling the screen now.
So Craig has a question saying, how do you handle the disengaged so as not to infect the existing team?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I call these people toxic, TALKSICK, because their communication actually infects other people with negativity. I think it's important to manage them out of the organization if they're not coachable. I have helped do that in some situations. The other thing, though, if they're salvageable, is find out what's the positive intent behind their negative attitude. Sometimes the people who are the biggest complainers or whiners or toxic individuals, they're the ones that could be turned to be the strongest force for your organization. You know why? Because they still care. If they didn't care, they wouldn't be bitching, moaning, and whining. I call them the BMWs, right? And if they still care, then they do keep speaking up about it. if they gave up hope, they would not even be mentioning it. They would just come to work and be disengaged. So sometimes I take those people aside and I say, you know, your perspective is really valuable and it's valid. Do you realize the negative impact it might be having on people, the way you express it? And how might we shift that in a direction that's more positive? And I've seen some people turn around whenever I put it that way to say, hey, we value your negative input because it's important to be critical and to look at ourselves through a critical lens. But we want to make a positive difference here. So could you help take the lead on that? And oftentimes these individuals turn out to be the biggest advocates.
People just need to be acknowledged, I find. And when you do that, they were so willing to work with you. Question from Elizabeth is, can you talk about corporate culture in startups?
Yeah, so I worked for 3 different startups as an employee, and I've worked with over a dozen startups I helped found, and then another dozen that I've been consulting with. And I would say the biggest force for the company culture in startups is the founder, at least until it gets to be, bigger than 50 or 100 people. So, you know, the founding members are having a huge influence on what does the office look like? Do we have titles? Do we have an org chart? Are they going to sit out in the bullpen at the desks with everybody else or have their own office? I'm working with one company right now where they don't have any titles. They don't even want to call people executives. They just want to call people leaders or part of the team. And so they're really being careful not to create hierarchy and power distance. And that's all because the 2 co-founders think it's so important to maintain equal standing among people. So the founders have the biggest influence in the early stages of the startups.
That is so true. So the poll results are in. 14% are saying they are going to learn more about the history of their organization.
Good.
14% are saying they're going to apply the island model of culture to their teamwork.
All right.
29% of them are saying that they are going to do one of the organizational DNA exercises with their team. And 43% have said other.
Other, I need to know, what is other?
So those of you who selected others, if you could just add those in the chat, that we would really appreciate it.
Also, if you want more details on those exercises, I do have an article that I've written for projectconnections.com. And if you go to projectconnections.com and you type my name, DNA, you will surely find it.
Wonderful. So does anyone have any other questions before we move on? Okay, and we'll move on, and then if anyone does have any questions come up, we will answer them a little bit later.
Okay.
Oh, my screen is not moving ahead.
Oh, well, that happens. So I think at this point, it's just really important to realize that each of us is impacting the organization's culture. We are leaders regardless of position and title, and the way we communicate, the way we behave has an incredibly strong impact on those people around us. And it's like we have an infectious disease. If we have a good disease, people are infected with some positive attitude, hope for the future, and a deep commitment to our sense of identity and our purpose. If we have a negative disease, then we can spread that negatively, as Craig pointed out, as psychic vampires, spreading that negative attitude throughout the organization. Okay, so I see special webinar opportunity on my screen.
So we have a special webinar only opportunity, and with my screen sharing. Kimberly, can you please share your screen?
Oh, sure. Let me see if I can make that work.
So while we're doing that, just wanted to share about the special webinar only opportunity where for the people that are on this call, we can go ahead and do a audit for your company's organization and see what your DNA looks like in your organization. And this is a value of $9.97, but for the first 10 people only, it will be absolutely free.
And what we would do in that, we would have a discussion about how clear the organization's culture and DNA is, and what has already been done about sharing the founder stories and clarifying values in an actionable way, and also sharing a coherent, powerful, and inspiring vision of the future. That would be the main thing that we would do in an organization's audit.
Wonderful. And as a bonus, we will do a lunch and learn as an appetizer of what our team's approach is to change-inducing experiential facilitator workshop.
Sure. And if you live in the Silicon Valley, now, unless you want to fly me to wherever you are, I mean, I'm happy to get on an airplane. But if you live anywhere in the Silicon Valley and you can open up your office for a lunch and learn, get 10 or 15 people together, we can actually do an experiment and offer an appetizer, a taste of what it would be like to do a full DNA exploration for you and your company.
Right. And if you're located elsewhere, don't worry, we can do this virtually as well.
That's right. And here's how you get in touch with Seema.
If you are interested in this audit and the bonuses, you can send an email to me, seema.g@mentorglobal.com, with the subject that I want a free audit now, and we will get in touch with you. And then my email is also in the chat box.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, Seema. That's really helpful. And, of course, we're looking forward to hearing from people who want to help spread their organization's DNA and culture and create a strong internal brand that would be the foundation of a strong external brand that makes it much easier to attract and retain employees and to grow your business. That's what the whole name of the game is, to grow your business success. Silicon Valley Alliances is always happy to partner with Mentor Global on these kinds of efforts. And again, we have a team of people here in Silicon Valley. We have a team in Tokyo, and we have one member also in Europe. What we can do from the Silicon Valley that's tough to get elsewhere is focus on entrepreneurship, risk-taking, mistake-making, and failing forward, building a tall junk pile and building your dreams on top of that pile of learning experiences. So again, thank you for being with us, and thank you, Seema, for hosting me today.
It was wonderful having you, Kimberly. I've learned so much, and you think that since I'm in the same field as you and so involved in taking the organizational effectiveness to the next level, you think you know it all. But this is proof that you can always improve and always learn. So I've learned quite a bit with you today, and I appreciate you taking the time of being here with us. And I really appreciate our audience's time for taking about an hour out from your hectic schedule to learn something new. We would love to hear from you all. If you would like to get an audit, we would love to set that up for you, as well as any other topics that you would be interested in having us present. And we are getting questions for whether we're going to share the slide deck. We will do that. Later on today, we should be sending it to the people who have attended this today. Craig is saying, thanks, ladies. Nice program and content. Appreciate your Q&A too. Very on point. Thank you so much, Craig. We really appreciate it. And don't forget to go to projectconnections.com for Kimberly's article.
Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you somewhere on planet Earth.
Yes. Thank you, and have a wonderful day, evening, night, depending on which part of the world you are. Have a great day.